Hi, good evening. My name is Gabi Birkner, and I'm the features editor here at Chalkbeat. I would love to welcome all of you here tonight or this afternoon if you're west of the East Coast. And I'm thrilled to have with me our wonderful advice columnist, Dr. Kem Smith. She's an educator with more than 20 years of experience, an author and an artist who's taught everything from pre-K to college students. Currently, she is teaching 12th grade English in St. Louis, Missouri. Also here is Janine Scott. Welcome. She's on Chalkbeat's Reader Advisory Board. She's the chair of that board and a high school math teacher at Davis Aerospace High School in Detroit. She was Michigan Department of Education's Detroit Teacher of the Year for 2020 and 2021. So I'd like to invite all the attendees to introduce yourself in the Zoom chat box. Tell us where you're tuning in from, and if you're a teacher, tell us where you teach. We have some questions that were submitted in advance of the event, but you can also submit your questions for Dr. Kem and Janine via the Q&A Zoom function. Everyone who submits a question or has submitted a question will be entered to win a bundle of Chalkbeat swag. So so ask away. And I just wanted to start with Dr. Kem and Janine. Let's just get this conversation started. I wanted to hear from you. What do you want people here tonight or this afternoon, wherever you are, to know, and Chalkbeat readers in general to know about you and your teaching career?
I'll go first. So welcome everyone. Welcome back to the new school year. I don't know if you've started or if you're gearing up to start, but we're off over here in St. Louis and having a great time learning and experiencing what we anticipated all summer, and that is sort of a return to normal. So welcome back. And when I think about my career, the 20 plus years that I've been in and maybe out at times of education, for me, it has been about personal growth. And what I mean by that is every year I learn something from my students. And I don't want to sound selfish because, of course, I'm here to teach them, but they teach me so much. I've learned so many things about how to be a better human. I think when I first started teaching, I thought it was about control and classroom management. But now, as I've gained knowledge from my students, it really is about this personal relationship where I move them from where they were to where they need to be by the end of the school year. And there's this thing where when I first started teaching, I would do a breakup with my students. In May, I would say, okay, I'm not going to be your teacher anymore. It's not you, it's me. But now I tell them, you're my student forever. If I see you and you're 30 and you're in the grocery store shopping, I am still always your English teacher. You can always get a recommendation from me because I know that you're a hard worker. If you survive my class, you're a hard worker. So again, it's about personal growth for me.
That's great to hear. Janine?
Well, so welcome back and happy school year, everyone. That's what I say here in Detroit. We just started on Monday. So the kids are back and not in full force yet, because this is the first year that we've started before Labor Day and probably 18 years or so. And I am entering my 20th year as a teacher. And what I'd like you to know about this school year is that we get to start all over again. That's the great thing about school years. We get to restart. We get to take a look at what we've done last year. We get to take a look at all the major successes and some of the major fails. And then we get to fix them and start over and try again. And we get the same old students in some cases, and we get brand new students with new personalities. And so this year, especially, I'm excited because last year was the hardest year I've ever had to teach in. The post-pandemic, initially when we were online, because Detroit spent the whole 2020 online, 2020, 21 online, and I thought that was hard. Like 2019, 2020, whatever year we spent all year online. Then we came back last year and it was the hardest year ever. It was hard because our students were not used to learning, quote unquote, traditionally. It was hard because we came back from the pandemic with all of the trauma that we experienced personally. We got trauma secondhand from our students. And then we even got what I like to call tertiary trauma, which is trauma that they didn't necessarily experience directly, but they heard about. And so that year was just a really difficult year. And this year it feels better. And so I'm excited to be back, understanding that we can never go back because how it was is never how it's going to be. But I'm just really, really excited that I get to start another year with my students.
That's wonderful. You guys are really inspiring to hear the continued growth year after year of both yourselves and your students. So Dr. Kem, we're here. I don't know if anyone else on this Zoom is an advice column aficionado, but I certainly am. And I hope everyone is subscribed and reading religiously Dr. Kem's column. And in your introductory column, you mentioned that you left teaching and you returned. So I wanted to hear a little bit about what made you come back. And there's so much talk about teacher burnout and teachers potentially leaving the classroom. What would you tell teachers who are thinking of leaving?
Okay, so there's several parts to that question. I would say my family has always sacrificed financially because of my decision to be a teacher. And I did start to believe that I could make more money in a different industry. And I left and I started my own business. And people would still come to me and say things like, oh, because I continue to sub and I continue to adjunct. But people say things, and they say this, I feel like, to every teacher. How can you teach? I don't even see how you could do that. You know, how that is a lot. And I say, how could I not? Like, teaching isn't something that you just do. It is more of a calling. Like, how can you not be around students? Like, once you're a teacher, you are it doesn't leave. Like, the structures, the things we put in place, like even when I operated my own business, people would come in and say, this feels like a classroom. And it was totally just, totally a different industry. It was part of the structure and the way my mind works and the way things are set up for me. So when people consider leaving teaching, oh my God, if I think about like advice, and I hate to say this, but the retirement, like the structure of that was put in place for a reason. Ensure that your plan is together so that leaving doesn't interrupt your ability to leave when you're ready to retire. And let me get back to the question, because you said, what made you leave and what made you come back? I left because I really believed I could make more money and be a happier person without the burden of having a classroom and having to teach and meeting all these students and all the obligations that go with teaching. I came back because I honestly missed the stability of teaching. I know that sounds a little frou-frou, but as an entrepreneur, sorry, I have an announcement coming through. Okay, sorry about that. I missed the security of teaching. I missed the students. I missed a regular paycheck instead of trying to guess when I was going to get paid based on the amount of work that I did. I missed the camaraderie amongst my friends. There was so much of teaching that I missed. And when I came back, everything that I missed came flooding back to me. Like, it was the embracing that you get. And that's the thing, people don't understand that one of the things that connects you to teaching is the relationship amongst you and your peers, especially when you find yourself in the right place, in the right space, because every school has a personality. When you find a school that matches your personality and you can work with the leadership and the leadership is working with you, it flows and you are able to really get in and just jam. I love the autonomy of being able to take the curriculum and make it work for the students who I teach. I'm going to stop there because I think I did answer your question.
You did. You answered both parts of it, or all three
Okay.
parts. So thank you so much. Janine spoke a little bit about the challenges that come with teaching and how last year was such a challenging year. And I wanted to hear from you about any, Dr. Kem, and then if Janine, if you want to add anything else, some of the most significant challenges you faced in your teaching career.
So, of course, last year was beyond belief. It was unexplainably challenging. The hybrid teaching, when we came back to school, there were students who didn't come back, and they were wearing a mask, and I was wearing a mask, and I had to remember to talk to the kids on the computer plus the kids in the classroom, and then the technology wasn't there. Sometimes the internet would be down, and it was kind of compared to a nightmare. But what I loved about it was that we were able to support the students. When I think about the most difficult year, I would say, and I wasn't even a classroom teacher then, but I teach in Ferguson, or my school district. The name of my school district is Ferguson Florissant School District. So during the time of when Michael Brown was killed here in Ferguson, which is about maybe a 7-minute drive from where I live, our schools completely shut down. So there was maybe a 2-week delay in school starting. When school started, there was another delay. And what I found was we were not able to support our kids or talk them through what they were experiencing. Our kids were very much involved in a lot of the activity around, and they had questions and they wanted to debrief, but we were not available for them during that time because the schools were shut. And I think that that was a real challenge for me, and it still is. So just being able to support kids in ways that make sense for them and make sense for the community, again, that plays into, yes, this is difficult, but we were called for such a time as this. And I love to be able to walk them through what we consider in our district was a dual pandemic, because when George Floyd was killed, that was really a challenge for everyone in the community and across the world. Then the schools were shut while that was happening. So it was so much to deal with. I think our challenges are good challenges, and that with this, we've had the opportunity to sort of dismantle a lot of the bias and the racism that is happening within our block of the world. So although it has been challenging, the challenges have forced us to grow, not only as individual people, but as a district. Like, we have an initiative now that we didn't have before. And it really looks at providing equity within our schools. We looked at our zero tolerance policies. We looked at the things that were causing or contributing to the school to prison pipeline. So there's been a lot happening and a lot of movement. And yes, it's been challenging and it's a stretch. And some days I am just exhausted, but I get the rest that I need and I'm back because the kids need us.
Anything else you want to add, Janine? Any sort of lessons from that, the hard time you experienced last year and teachers across the country experience?
I think that Dr. Kem spoke for just about everybody, and all of us had our own special types of challenges, but we did we're still working through it, and we're still here. And, as Detroit during the pandemic, we took a big hit in terms of deaths. I would see online, I always think of my one student, his grandma was in a wheelchair and she would come behind him in the camera every single day. And I was like, tell your granny, I said, hey, granny, hi. And the whole class would wave to her. She didn't get it. She was like, eh. And she died of COVID. And so when she passed, it kind of affected all of us. And so like Dr. Kem said, one of the things that was awful about the pandemic and awful about a lot of things is not being able to support your students necessarily like you want to. But one of the good things is actually being there to support your students. And just like she said earlier, my students were actually there to support me. There would be days when I'd come on line like this and I'd be crying and I get little private messages. Are you okay, Ms. Scott? Are you going to make it? And I would just tell my students, if it weren't for you, I don't know if I'd make it. I think about it, as you can hear in my voice, I'm getting misty as I think about it. It was awful. And it was the worst year I'd ever had, or so I thought online. And then I came back and just saw all the damage to our students and to our adults. And the good thing, because you always try to take some good out of it and learn, the good thing is that I made new types of connections. And as a teacher, I've always been one of those teachers who kind of know that I'm teaching students. And then I'm a math teacher, but I'm teaching students. And so you remember what's important as far as who you're teaching. And then you remember that your subject is important. And last year, it was so important to remember you're our main priority as a teacher. And so I'm excited for this year because I'm a math teacher. I used to tell kids, hey, don't hate me because I'm a math teacher. We gotta get to math, y'all. But it reminded me more than anything that I was teaching students. And that was one of the beauties and the difficulties of last year.
I love that you're teaching students. You're teaching math, but you're teaching students first and foremost. This event is largely about advice. And I wanted to just hear briefly from you, Dr. Kem, what do you hope for that after the bell will be for the Chalkbeat community and also just for the larger world and community of educators?
While each individual building faces its own challenges, there are some similarities, and there are forums where there's comedians and they're making a lot of money making jokes about schools. Everybody is just kind of capitalizing on our struggle. So when I think about after the bell, I would like to have a space where you can openly say, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. And maybe there would be someone to point you to, hey, I felt that, I went through that, and here's how I made it. Because ultimately, we all want to achieve our own personal development plan and when it comes to our own growth as teachers, so that we can assist students better. So I want after the bell to be a place where you can actually grow as a person and as a teacher. And I hope that it becomes a community where people can not just complain, because everyone talks about teachers complaining in the staff lounge, but get support that you need. Because that complaining that happens is because sometimes you don't feel like you're being heard. And I've been there and I've sat there and I've heard people try to express what's really bothering them. And at the bottom line is they don't feel supported. I want after the bell to be a place where you can feel supported.
Beautiful.
Can I just quickly get
absolutely
jump
I'm
right
so
excited about what you just said, because one of the things that we do at our school is we have a little support team of all the teachers in our building. And so that was so important that we just hear each other. And the quote unquote complaints could be anything from my computer didn't work to guess what? so-and-so got a math problem right. Yay. And it was a community. So I'm so looking forward to your column and your answers and just the community that it's going to foster amongst teachers, because what it does, what columns like yours does, is it allows us to know we're not alone in the world, that we're out there and that, you know, somebody's been through it. And my assumption is that in your column, as you give advice, I may even hear something and be like, hey, Dr. Kim, say this, this, and this. And so it'll just be one of those things where we can work as a group in a community. So I'm super duper excited about you and the column. Just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Janine. I appreciate you saying that, because just the thought that is needed, and then that Chalkbeat is providing this space for us. I'm excited about it. So I hope everyone else is, and I hope that it really comes to fruition in terms of support. That's, I mean, if I had one word to walk away with, I want it to be support.
Yeah. I love the idea that like community forms at this intersection of vulnerability and empathy. So being able to share what you're going through and being able to be heard and understood by other people. And so I'm really excited that we have this column at Chalkbeat, and we have you specifically to write it. So let's get into some back to school advice. You, Dr. Kem, you wrote that every time you have a free down moment, you use it to soak up some form of information, not to store it, but to share it for those who will benefit. So in that spirit, as we begin the school year anew, I know some teachers have already started, some are about to start. What do you want to share with your fellow educators? Is there a piece of advice for both you, Dr. Kem, and Janine, that you want to share with your fellow educators here tonight?
I have a running list. Like, I don't want to force anyone to make me happy. Like, that's my personal responsibility. So I have a running list of like 10 things that I really enjoy. And if my day is rough, because you have rough days, I'm going to go to one of those 10 things, and I'm doing that so that I can experience my own joy. Does that make sense? Like, I can't just always be like leaning on my husband so much. Some of this has to come from me. So if I could give anyone a piece of advice, enjoy being you and enjoy that this is the career that you've chosen. In that, still find a way to love yourself so much that it pours over into the students who you teach. That's my first piece. My second piece, though, is you own your career. You need a personal plan of like, where is this going for you? If you want to teach and then work until you retire, good. If you want to teach and then move through different avenues, good. But always know that you own this, and it's up to you how you move and what your next move will be. Okay, I'll stop there.
Janine, what about you?
Well, what I would say is celebrate the small stuff. I'm one of those people who feel my emotions. So I'm a crier. So I cry when I need to cry. And then I celebrate the small stuff. And I get recharged by remembering that if you got a whole bunch of little small things, it makes something big. And then you can just make it through your next day. So I believe your question was advice for the upcoming year. Was that it?
That's right.
Celebrate the small stuff. Remember your purpose, because you're there to teach the students. Try really hard and do your very best, because when you do your very best, that's all you can do. We as teachers face pressure from so many different areas, from the kids, from the administration, from the parents, from the media, from our bills. We get so many different types of pressures that if we know that we are trying our very best and that's the best we can do, have peace, get peace from that, have peace in that. And then, you know, a lot of times I would be like, well, the very best I can do, and I'm good because I know I'm giving my very best.
Good advice. We have the right advice givers on tonight. Thank you so much for sharing so much wisdom with us. So now we're going to turn it over to the audience for questions. Some people have already submitted questions in advance, but you can do it via the Zoom Q&A function. Just as a reminder, well, actually, we're going to give away 3 bundles of Chalkbeat swag to people who ask questions. We'll be contacting the winners after the event. We won't get to all the questions today, but Dr. Kem has a weekly column where you can continue to ask your questions if we don't manage to get to it tonight. So let's see. Questions that have come in. Since it's the beginning of the school year, what's Katie Schroeder, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, asked, what are the best ways to establish routines early in the school year? Janine, let's start with you there.
Well, one of the ways that I establish routines is I set expectations. I introduce myself to my students. I tell them that I teach math, that I'm the very best math teacher that I know, because I am, because I have confidence in myself. And I need my kids to know that, you're learning from the very best there is. And then I also just set expectations. And I have one rule and one expectation. My rule is, please do what I ask you to do when I ask you to do it, and we're cool. My expectation is that you try your very best all the time, but all means there are exceptions, because sometimes we have bad days, and I'm going to allow you to have a bad day on occasion, but I expect you to try your best. And I don't care, and I really don't. I teach Algebra 2 and Pre-Cal. I teach the big kids, 11th and 12th graders, but I don't care how much you know when you come into my class. What matters to me is that you know more when you leave my class. If you learn more when you leave my class than when you've entered, then you are successful. And so as I set expectations and routines for students, I let them know that I believe in them. My one goal, my very one goal, is for them to know more when they leave than when they came. And then we kind of just go through what my expectations are. And what I found is, you've been successful with expectations and classroom norms when your students start mocking you. So my students will get up and go, did you see that do now on the board? That says do now. So they'll mock me and they'll do stuff, and I just repeat it every day. And you can't have too many. Can't have too many rules, because it becomes confusing. Remember that your kids are kids, and my method works for big kids. I've never worked with kids under 6th grade, so I don't know what to do with the little ones. I don't suspect that works, but I do suspect that a small number of guidelines, and I prefer the use of guidelines versus rules, because guidelines means that you're flexible, kind of. But a small number of guidelines repeated over and over and over again work.
I think we're all going to come out of this session knowing a little more than we came in with. So thank you for that and for sharing. What about any suggestions you have, Dr. Kem, for establishing those early school year routines and expectations?
Miss Jean, I love it, because it's like, hey, welcome to my room. You're here, and I'm a no-nonsense nurturer. So I was tickled at that. My administrator, his favorite word is pre-corrects. So you're teaching the things, and you're consistently reminding it until it becomes a habit. For me, I get the rules really easily. It's the procedures where the kids fall down on. They forget that there's a certain procedure when you need to borrow a pencil. There's a certain procedure if your computer's not working, or if you don't have a charger, or if you need to go to the bathroom. So there's a lot of time spent teaching procedures and just going over how to be successful in this space that we're in, because just like schools have personalities, every teacher has a different personality, and the kids have to get to know you as well as you have to get to know them. When you're trying to establish these norms, especially, and Miss Janine, I've worked with the younger kids. Kids are expecting, they have an expectation that you have a certain way to do things. They already know it. And they kind of just want to see how far they can go and and stretch your rules and stretch your limits. And that's why it's important to continually remind them, um, and develop that partnership really early on with families. And that the meet the teacher night, all of that, I found with the older kids, it helps me more than anything to have a syllabus. So week by week, they know what assignments are going to be due when, from August they all the way up until January 13th when the semester is over. They have that all laid out. And so if someone comes and says, "Hey, I'm going to be absent," you already know what the assignment is far in advance. So lining that up for the 11th and 12th graders is really helpful. But for the younger kids, you just have to teach it, reinforce it, teach it, reinforce it. Jolly Ranchers work. Sorry, I know there's a rule about no kids and no candy, but if they get a procedure right, and if we play a game, it's, because it's not so chewy that it's stuck to your teeth. But anyway, my point is you're going to have to reinforce with kids what the procedures are and what your rules are. And if they forget or they're a little too tired today to follow the rule, you still love them as a student, but get back on track. And that's where we are with it.
I'm pro Jolly Ranchers. As using those in class. I remember they worked for me growing up, and I'm sure they would work on my kids as well. Some incentive. We got a variation. Actually, Dr. Kem, you mentioned, especially with younger kids, like that meet the parent, like back to school night is really important. And so we got a variation on this question of how to build cohesive and strong parent-teacher relationships. Melody Pink, Janice Granum, Joanne Massey, and Lisa Radcliffe all posed variations on that question. And so I will let you guys, I don't know, Dr. Kem, do you want to start with this one?
Sure, I'll hop in. I'm kind of a cheat. Like, I don't know how to say this, but I live in the community where I work. And so there are a few parents who haven't heard of me or my kids. My kids I have adult children now, but I've always been able to relate to them because, we may have played sports together. So there is this thing where I call it street credit. I try to get with the kids and I try to get it with the parents, where first of all, I'm letting you know that this is a partnership this whole year. Like everything we do, this is my opportunity to work with you to help your child meet these particular goals. Partnerships, I find, but I don't know, every school doesn't have what I call this, what we have, and that's the special school district, where we partner with students who have different educational needs, such as an individual education plan or, a 504. I have found from working with the special school district, theirs is about communication. We cannot deny that these children who come to us are children and that they're being sent there by someone. We cannot just go on and move on. We have to be able to communicate with families. And that is not easy because we are the only profession where, like, some people go to work and they do their job and then they go home. We go to work, we start on our job, but then we teach all day and then we do our work after the kids leave. So the idea of then trying to communicate with a parent makes it that much more difficult. Make yourself available in terms of how they can reach you by email or, whatever way you choose to communicate. But stay in touch with them and communicate to them what the goals are and where they are with the goal very early on.
Just so, thank you so much. Just so we get to as many questions as possible. Janine, do you want to answer the next question we got? How do you ensure that new teachers feel welcome into the group of seasoned teachers? Wonder if you had any advice there. And that question came from a reader named Ryan Fiore.
So with new teachers, I always like to, so I'm a master teacher in Detroit Public Schools. A master teacher is a teacher who is part-time teacher coach. So half the day we coach teachers and the other half the day we teach kids. And so it's a cool program because we never forget what it's like to be in the classroom. But we also get special training and education to kind of coach new teachers. And I've also taught at the university in the College of Ed. And the one thing that I find that new teachers need more than anything is support. And so with support and engagement, I just talk to the teachers. I offer my help. I offer my assistance, from everything to, do you know where your stapler is, to let's talk about classroom management, let's talk about lesson planning. And then I offer advice on what things I could do better, but more than that, I offer advice, or I give opinions on what I think that they did that was great. Everybody, Dr. Kem said this, we all have our own personalities and we develop our own styles as teachers. And one of the things I love about new teachers is they are in the profession ready to change the world. That is so impressive to me. And I always let my new teachers know what's great about them. Because, and even with the kids, that's one of the ways I foster relationships with parents. I don't call parents when their kids are bad. I call parents when their kids are good, because they never get to hear that. I always thank moms for being good mothers, because they never get to hear that they're a good mom. I always tell them, I can tell you raise your child, because they say thank you and please, and I love that. With new teachers, I always say, I love the fact that you tried to engage them doing this, this, and this. Oh, so what? It didn't work. Now you just tried something different. And so to keep new teachers engaged, you let them know that you're there to support them. You let them know what they've done that's good. You tell them how much you appreciate them for bringing hope back into the school and in the classroom. Nothing like a new teacher mentor. So new teachers mentor me as a seasoned teacher. I get to learn things. But then you also offer support for when the whole roof falls down, because they don't realize that all of us have those days where, oh my God, nothing worked right. The kids hate me. And I forgot to wear deodorant.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. We're coming to the end of our session, but before that, I just maybe a little lightning round question, if you can just have a few best practices. We also got variations on the question of how parents and teachers can help keep students calm and manage stress, especially as the school year is beginning. Chris White and Dee Manning are two readers who wrote in with those questions. So just knowing we don't have a ton of time, any quick suggestions for parents and teachers?
First, music. Music is key. And then the calmer you are, you actually set the stage in your classroom.
Great.
I also have a beanbag chair. And if it's one of those days, you can go sit down in the beanbag chair and just chill out. I also tell my students that if you're just having one of those days, you just let Ms. Scott know. You don't have to tell me everything. You don't have to tell me all your business, or you can. But if you're just having one of those days, just sit down and know that it'll be okay. And with parents, I tell them the same exact thing. And lastly, and this you have to be careful with, I have a lavender oil, because lavender is calming. And so lately when my kids are having panic attacks, and it happened 3 times this week, I put a teeny bit of oil and then rub it and breathe deep, and it calms them down. Now, I don't know if it calms them down or not, but I believe it does. And
I have no doubt that you are both the kinds of teachers that your students are going to remember forever. Thank you so much to Dr. Kem Smith and Janine Scott for your time today, and for more than that, for sharing your wisdom with us. If you'd like to hear more from Dr. Kem, Her column is After the Bell, and it's published every Thursday morning, so look for it. You can also subscribe to our How I Teach newsletter. It'll come right to your inbox every week. I also want to tell you, we recently launched a Facebook group for After the Bell, because what Dr. Kem was saying is that this is a community where we want teachers and educators of all kinds to feel supportive and to feel like someone's listening and to get the advice and the support that they need. We just launched the Facebook group. So the group is called After the Bell Teacher Advice, and we invite you to join that if you're on Facebook. We will be contacting the winners of the Chalkbeat swag bundle. So keep your fingers crossed and you will hear from us if you won. I just wanted to thank again our wonderful panelists, and thank you to everyone who attended today. It was just a really meaningful way to start the new school year, and I'm just so grateful to having heard from both of you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
This was great. Thanks a lot. Really looking forward to that column, Dr. Kem.
Thanks.